The Plantation by Erwin Taylor. I used to think it was all a joke, a scary story, just fake. I never believed in ghosts or spirits. The house I moved into had been abandoned for years. Definitely a fixer-upper. Rotten boards, holes in the drywall, leaky faucets, non-flushing toilets. I wanted the challenge of a fixer-upper. I was new in town and starting my life over after a seriously bad relationship. There was something about the house that drew me in. From first sight, I knew it was going to be mine. I felt it in my core, as the house were a part of my very being. It was white with a wraparound two-story deck. The paint was all chipped and flaking off. The door was once a vibrant bright red with an oval stained glass style window. I always wanted a house just like this. Lots of land, wraparound porch, columns, lots of rooms. Oh, it was perfect. A little rough, but perfect. The real estate agent who showed it to me kept trying to talk me out of buying it. He didn't even want to show it to me, but I insisted on seeing it. He kept dropping not so subtle hints that he didn't want me to be there the entire time we were there, saying things like, "If you don't want to see the inside, that's fine, we can totally leave now." And "This place gives me the creeps. I wouldn't live here if my life depended on it." The things that happened here. It was like this guy didn't want the thousands of dollars he would get commission off of on this sale. Even though the property was bank owned, it was not cheap. The land it was on alone was over 5 acres. And the land is not cheap. He was all jittery and jumpy as we were walking up to the front door. I told him to just go wait in the car and I would take a look around the property by myself since he was obviously uncomfortable. Some people just can't handle old houses. This in particular was built in the early 1800s, so needless to say, I just brushed him off and bought the house. The house was still full of the previous owner's belongings and furniture, so I decided I would keep my one-bedroom apartment for now, until I can get the house in a at least semi-livable condition. The morning I signed the papers and got the keys, the fog hung low to the ground and there was a chill in the air. I drove to the house to celebrate and start clearing out. I had ordered an industrial-sized dumpster to be dropped off later that evening, and I wanted to start going through the items left in the house. Maybe I could keep some of it. Maybe some of it was salvageable. The place looked eerie, like it was some kind of scene from a horror movie. I laughed it off, being an avid horror movie junkie. The fog opened up a pathway from my truck to the front door, almost like it was greeting me in and rolling in the red carpet for me, inviting me into the horror story I was about to walk into and live in for the foreseeable future. Money was no issue for me. My ex-husband was extremely wealthy and I got everything when he died. Money, stocks, jewels, and all of his companies. He was a manipulative bastard who would beat me, cut me, and hurt me in any way imaginable. I was too scared to leave for years. I just took it. One night, in a fit of rage, he tried to kill me. Apparently, I had embarrassed him at a business dinner because the bruise on my right wrist hadn't healed fully and my bracelet moved, exposing the bruise to his colleagues. He was drunk and insisted on driving. He hit me across the face as soon as we got into the car and he yelled at me the entire drive. He was so angry. He never let me drive, even when he was completely wasted. He had finally gone mad and steered the car right off the bridge. When we hit the water, he hit his head against the steering wheel, knocking him unconscious. He was able to get out of the car and swim to the shore, but I was badly injured and passed out as soon as I got to dry land. I woke up the next afternoon in the hospital, terrified that he would find out that I was here and come to finish the job he started, furious that I was yet again embarrassing him by being in the hospital. I started to panic and my heart rate raced and the heart rate monitor was going crazy. Luckily, a nurse was there and tried to calm me down. "Matthew! Where is Matthew? I gotta get out of here. He is going to be so mad. He is trying to kill me and The nurse calmed me down a bit and told me that there was some officers here to talk to me. When they told me he was dead, I just broke down and cried in relief. I told them all the horrible things he would do to me. They let me cry and asked me what happened that night. I told the officers everything that led up to the event, and they ruled it a suicide and attempted murder. I never saw them again. So here I am. I had moved to another state, I knew no one, starting my life over. Little did I know the horror that was still ahead of me. When I got to the door to unlock it, a strong gust of wind out of nowhere blew my hair all around, and I heard what sounded like a deep laughter in the wind. Like something was happy I was there, that the house belonged to me now. It made me pause, but again I just shrugged it off and went inside. The inside looked like the people who lived there before had just left everything and left. The entryway led to a massive double staircase going up either side of the room. There were old books on the bookshelves, plates, and half-empty glasses on the table, a blanket thrown over the back of the sofa. The bank didn't do anything when they took ownership of the home again. There was no cleaning done, nothing was fixed or repaired. They just took the house in the condition and mess it was in and put it on the market, where it stayed for years, apparently. I had bought quite a few moving packing boxes from the Home Depot and a ridiculous amount of tape. I walked to the windows in the living room and opened them for the first time in what seemed like eternity. The window creaked open, making an exert force once more than I had first intended. With a few huffs and some good old elbow grease, the window was open, finally letting some fresh, crisp air in the house. I turned on my Get It Done playlist and put together a few boxes to start deciding what to keep, throw away, or donate to charity. Most of the books went into the donate box. The books on the shelf were not my kind of books. There were books on evolution and really old medical books dating back to the 1800s. They were probably worth a pretty penny, but money was no object to me. I kept the handwritten journals I found. Reading those could be fun and enlightening. I hope they were written from the people who lived here. Maybe I could find out why this place was on the market so long, why everyone avoided it. After the bookshelf was cleared out, I thought about all those medical books and thought they really didn't belong in a dollar thrift store, and figured they really should be donated to a medical school or museum or something. I set a reminder on my phone to see if there were any local medical schools that might like the books. I cleaned up the rest of the first room and made a little pile of blankets to take to the apartment and wash. A girl can never have too many blankets. As I was taking things out to my truck, I thought I heard some footsteps by the bookshelf and a man say something muffled and incomprehensible. I paused and almost dropped a box of books through the floor. I turned around and I didn't see anyone there. I shook it off and figured I was just hearing things. I locked up the house and headed back to my apartment, determined to find somewhere to donate all these books. I found a college a little over an hour from my apartment. The next day I drove to the college, spoke to one of the pre-med professors who enthusiastically accepted the books and let me know that the book's value was well into the thousands. He was glad to take them off my hands. I got back to my truck, and when I went to turn it on, it wouldn't turn over. It was a brand new truck, had less than 5,000 miles on it. I tried a couple more times and the same thing, it would not turn over. There was no way this was normal. I stopped and I took a few deep breaths and tried again, slowly turning the truck. Luckily this time it started. As I was driving home, I thought about the footsteps, the voice, and my truck. I never really believed in the paranormal or superstition for that matter, but I was starting to wonder as these things started happening the morning I bought the old plantation. I wondered if my previous assumptions and beliefs were wrong. I quickly shoved that notion aside and told myself I was just psyching myself out. I continued to go through things in the house and found some really interesting things. I found a book of what could only be a slave manifest, names with dates and places they were from and where they were sold and how much. The pages upon pages of names were overwhelming. When I found this book, I decided to go out and explore some of the property. I found some disheveled huts and caved-in roofs. I looked inside and found some what could only be shackles, a pile of chains and cuffs by my door. My heart broke at the thought of what these people must have endured. I walked across a field and came across what looked like an opening of a storm shelter, but I knew better, knowing that this was a slave plantation. I was conflicted. Do I open the door and see what was inside, or do I just move on, knowing it was the worst of tortures, knowing it was a hot box? I opened the doors and instantly regretted it. There were dark blood stains, what looked like bone fragments. When I saw that, I screamed, let the doors slam down close, and ran back into the house. I wasn't sure what to do with what I found. Do I call the cops? Or is it unnecessary because it is most likely from a slave and too old to do anything about? I decided to call, just to be safe. They sent some people out and they said it was indeed from the 1800s and agreed that it was most likely a slave that met their sad end in that hot, dark hole. A week later, I finally got the house emptied out so the floors, walls, and ceilings could be repaired and redone. I had to hire a contractor from Atlanta to come and do the work, as everyone in town refused to come to the house. They were all excited and eager to do the work and loved how much I was going to pay until they found out my address. Every single one of them from my town and surrounding area said I was crazy, and there was no amount of money that would make them come to my house. They wouldn't even step foot on the property. So, when I finally found a crew that would come out and do all of the work, I offered a stupidly high commission for them to come. I even offered to pay for hotel and living expenses while the work was being done. They started the next week and they sent up a designer to help me pick out the flooring and paint colors and whatnot. He arrived the next day and we got down to planning right away. We decided to go ahead and remodel the entire inside and redo most of the layout. We spent the rest of the week shopping for furniture and picking out flooring and paint colors. When the construction crew arrived, they started right away, pulling up rotten floorboards and tearing out walls. The formal dining room had more secrets to reveal. In the boards, there were more bones, lots of bones, papers, and dozens of little boxes. The foreman called me into the room, his voice a little shaky. When I walked into the room, I froze. I saw a sea of hands holding onto the papers. The papers were freedom papers. They had names and dates. They were spattered with blood. I was afraid to look and see what was in the little boxes. I knelt and picked one up. My hands were shaking. I opened the box and looked down. Teeth. The box had teeth in it, laying on some bloody cotton. I closed the box and ran out of the room to the front door and threw up all over the railing on the deck in a dead bush. The owner of this plantation freed slaves, cut their hands off, and pulled out their teeth. They probably never made it off the land. They probably bled out before getting too far. My heart broke again, and tears started flowing from my eyes. I had to find out more about this man who killed so many of those he enslaved and allegedly set free. Set free in his way, not truly free. Free from this world, but not from that life to truly live. I got in my truck and headed to the public records office. When I got there, I asked the sweet-looking elderly lady manning the front desk where I would find information on a house and I just purchased. She smiled and asked what house I had bought. When I gave her my address, she looked at me in horror. Why would you buy that house? She asked me in a shaky voice. I fell in love with it. I had always wanted a house like that. I always wanted a fixer-upper. I just started doing some renovations and have found some weird stuff. I emphasized weird to hopefully relay the facts that she would, in fact, not ask more. I just want to know more about the previous owners. She hesitated and contemplated whether to help me or just tell me I was crazy. After a few long, silent moments, she sighed and told me to follow her. That house was built in 1805 by Dr. Raynard Williams.
Horrible man. He had thousands of slaves. Cruel man indeed. He used some of them as medical experiments. She led me down a hall and opened a door on the left. It was essentially a walk-in closet. Everything we have on that house and the family who lived there for generations in this closet. Thank you. Let me know if
She said with a tone of finality and walked back to her desk. I started to look around the closet and it didn't look like there was too much information, a few boxes and some old antiques. I grabbed the box labeled 1805 through 1857. The first thing I saw were old blueprints, the original plans for the house when it was built, which was fascinating in itself to look at. The folder on top had a court case for the young Dr. Williams, a malpractice suit saying one of his patients died from some kind of poisoning or exposure to some illness. He was convicted, found guilty, and stripped of his license. He was newly married, 20 years old, and his father had passed away that same year after building the large plantation home. So not only was he a new plantation owner with hundreds of slaves to manage, he was a new husband, and newly disgraced in his town and in the medical community. Everyone shunned him for practically killing the town hero's only son. While I was looking through the folder, the sweet elderly lady came back down to the hall. You know what, dearie? Why don't you take those boxes home with you, so you can go through them at your own pace instead of wasting all your time here? We don't normally do stuff like that, but the house has been abandoned for years. No one else is going to want information on that house. So just go ahead and take all that home with you. I can have Phil help you with the boxes. It's getting close to the closing time. Thank you. I will do that, but it's only 2 p.m. Are you closing early? No, dear. It's 6:30. You've been back there for hours. What? How? How did I lose 4.5 hours? Oh, I thought you knew how long you were back there. I should have checked on you. No, it's okay. I cleared my throat and realized I was absolutely starving. Where's Phil? Right here, ma'am, he said behind me. I about jumped out of my skin. I am so sorry I did not see you there. No worries, ma'am. I am a really quiet walker. There was a pause of awkward silence. So, the Williams plantation, what has you interested in that nut house? He picked up a few boxes and followed me to my truck. Well, I just bought it a couple weeks ago and I just started renovating it. Found some weird stuff. I'm sorry I didn't mean to offend. No offense taken. The guy who owned it seemed like a bit of a psycho. You could say that. Have a good night, man. Phil closed my truck and awkwardly walked away. My stomach rumbled and grumbled in hungry disapproval of the afternoon. I got in my truck and headed through town to find something to eat. How could I have spent 4 hours looking at one folder of information? The older lady must be crazy. I looked at the dash on my truck and sure enough it said 6:34. Maybe I am growing crazy. When I got to my apartment, my neighbor had just got home looking like he just came from the gym. Hey, would you mind helping me get these boxes to my apartment? I asked wearily. I hadn't really ever had much of a conversation with him, besides asking him to help me with all those books. They aren't full of heavy books, I promise. Just papers and files on the house I bought. Not a problem. He smiled and easily handled the boxes that Phil had carried for me earlier. Are you gonna tear the place down? He asked when he saw the label of boxes. No, but I am doing a total gut job of Reno. I found some pretty weird stuff and wanted to get some more information on the original owners. He paused. How weird. Like the hands of slaves holding their freedom papers in little boxes of teeth, I tried to say nonchalantly, trying to make it sound like no big deal. What the hell? He was startled and almost dropped the boxes he was carrying. I threw up all over the bushes in the front when I saw it all. It's bad. As far as I know, they were under the entire dining room floor. There may be more. My guess I will find out tomorrow when I go back. That's not enough to scare you off? No, not at all. Are you worried about it being haunted? No, I don't believe in all of that. My heart just goes out to those poor unfortunate people. Do you need help going through all of this? Well, I paused to think if I wanted to know everything right away or if a Reader's Digest version on some of it would be helpful. Sure. I just ordered a boatload of Chinese if you're hungry. Just give me bullet points or important stuff you find out. All of this may be overwhelming. I love Chinese, and yeah, just give a notepad and I will make some notes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Not sure if I should say you're welcome yet, depending on what we find out. We ate Chinese and went through all the boxes and all the papers. What we found out that night was heartbreaking. Dr. Raynard Williams murdered hundreds of slaves in his lifetime. His son inherited the house when Dr. Williams died. He was just as horrible of a man, if not worse. He learned everything from his father, including his medical knowledge, but was even more curious of a man than his father was. He attempted surgery with no form of anesthesia or sterilization. He would pour acid on his slaves when he had them open and note how long they would live. I won't go into any other details of how this man tortured his slaves. Let's just say that was the most humane thing he did to them. I went back to the house the next morning, and the crew had left the dining room exactly how it was when I ran out. They said they heard noises all day and what sounded like faint, horrific screams. I told them to bag all the hands, papers and teeth in Ziploc bags, which I had just bought the entire store's stock of gallon-sized bags, and put them all in boxes. I had to figure out what to do with them. I called the local police station to let them know what I had found and asked them what they think I should do. The police said they would take them and figure out what to do with them. They said some would probably be given to the city museum if they could find out who the slaves actually were. The crew were all jumpy and nervous since the screaming yesterday. I told them I would double what I was paying them for hanging in there through all the weird stuff that was going on and what all they were witnessing. There was only one who said no thank you, and he had left. He was muttering about slave curses and that there was no way he was going to get cursed for disturbing the remains of tortured slaves.